tell you this is corruption that has never been more blatant or more widespread. What is happening is you write the check, Trump and his cronies cash it, American taxpayers who are already being whacked with high prices are going to foot the bill. That's what we are seeing today, and that is what many of us are really, really angry about. So let me move to another topic. This Department of Justice is sending the message that if you're wealthy, if you're powerful, if you are well-connected, you won't be held accountable even if you abuse children. You know us after Congress passed the Epstein Files Transparency Act and DOJ finally began to release the files. Your department exposed survivors' names, their sensitive personal information, and even nude photos. Acting Attorney General, right now, families are paying $4, $5, even $6 or $7 for gas. Inflation is at its highest level in years because of the president's policies. But instead of helping Americans get by, President Trump is literally using their tax dollars to set up a slush fund to enrich his own friends. On Monday, your department settled the president's lawsuit by setting up a fund with $1.8 billion, and you and the president will pick the handful of people who decide how that money gets doled out. So let's be clear. What we're talking about is nothing short of the sitting president of the United States looting from the Treasury for his own gain. Do you seriously think this arrangement is appropriate? The president telling the federal government to settle a case and let him pay billions to the people that he chooses?
What you just described wouldn't be appropriate, and that's absolutely not what happened, and that's not what's happening now. So you just set up a series of facts, most of which were not true.
No,
No, it's not. I mean,
the president has set up a slush fund, however you want to say that it got set up, and he literally will get to choose through his hand-picked appointees who gets paid that fund. That is absurd.
The president did not set up this fund. It's not a slush fund. It's been done many times. We have lots of funds.
I heard your response earlier to Senator Van Hollen. This is not comparable to the case that you cited. A judge was not involved. This is the president versus himself setting up a fund.
The judge wasn't involved in the distribution in the Keep Siegel case at all. It just wasn't. There was a single commissioner that was set up, not five. And so when
the judge signed off on that case.
Yes, it was at a much later point in litigation.
That's right. My point. That is all of our point. And I just have to tell you, this is corruption that has never been more blatant or more widespread. What is happening is you write the check, Trump and his cronies cash it, American taxpayers who are already being whacked with high prices are going to foot the bill. That's what we are seeing today, and that is what many of us are really, really angry about. So let me move to another topic. This Department of Justice is sending the message that if you're wealthy, if you're powerful, if you are well-connected, you won't be held accountable even if you abuse children. You know us after Congress passed the Epstein Files Transparency Act and DOJ finally began to release the files. Your department exposed survivors' names, their sensitive personal information, and even nude photos, while redacting names of alleged perpetrators of those crimes. The message that sends is this Department of Justice worked harder to protect the privacy of potential child abusers than the survivors. Your predecessor refused to apologize to those victims, but I want to give you the same opportunity to apologize for the way the department handled the release of these documents. Will you apologize to the survivors?
When the president passed the Epstein Transparency Act, that was the only time, when the president signed the Transparency Act, that was when we were legally allowed to release the files. Prior to the passage of the act, which you all passed, I agree.
That is so not the question I'm asking.
It was the question you asked. You asked 5 or 6 questions. I'm answering them in order.
No,
that was one of the questions you asked.
The question I want you to answer is, will you apologize to the victims whose names, sensitive personal information, and even nude photos were not redacted by your department? Will you apologize to them?
Of course. We never want to release a single victim's name.
That is what they are hearing.
But can I answer the question, please? Is it fair?
I'm asking if you'll apologize.
So I just said yes, but I would like an explanation to be given to that. What this act did is it required us to review over 6 million pieces of paper in a very short period of time. And so 0.001%, we made mistakes, and we owned up to them. And the second that a victim or their lawyer told us that we made a mistake, we pulled that document down, and we put lawyers 24/7 in being responsive to victims and their lawyers to make sure that we fixed every single problem. And so yes,
I hear your anger.
I'm not angry. No, I'm not angry.
I hear
I'm just making sure it's understood that we matter.
There are nude photos released. I just want to hear you say I apologize to those victims.
So as I just said, of course, any time we release a victim's name that shouldn't be released, we have failed as a Department of Justice. And so we have to do everything that we can to not fail.
Well,
And so
I haven't heard the words, I apologize.
I'm trying to give you an
those
explanation of what happened. I don't think
Okay.
you're really interested in that because you keep
Well,
on cutting
I am,
me
but
off.
I have a few more questions here, and I want to know, and I know that Senator Van Hollen raised this, but I want to ask you, will you personally commit to meeting with the survivors? I have heard from them personally. The DOJ refused to meet them, and I'm asking about you. I'm asking about the Justice Department reaching out to them to be heard, not waiting for them to navigate a legal system that has obviously repeatedly failed them so far.
Can I answer?
Yeah, will you reach
Okay,
out to them?
so as we have said repeatedly, of course, any lawyer, now if a victim has a lawyer, I'm not allowed to reach out to the victim directly, you know that. But any lawyer can reach out to the Department of Justice. They have, and I've met with many victims and their lawyers, as has the FBI, as has the SDNY. We will always meet with victims' counsel. Any victim or their lawyer can come forward to the FBI
with these
at any
women,
time.
and I've met with them, and I know Senator Van Hollen has, and so many other. They are personally so feeling abused again and again by what happened to them originally, and now what's happening by them. I am saying to you, as a human being, who don't make them navigate a system that is impossible to navigate, that's already abused them. Reach out and ask to meet
So
with
wait,
them.
you're
That is
asking
all
me
I'm
to
asking
call, you want me to personally call the victims? Is that
I
what
can
you're asking
help
me to
you
do?
reach them.
Oh, that would be great. Yes, because we have said
And
from
you
day
will meet
one,
with them if
of
I reach
course,
out to you.
there have been members that have done that. And we immediately reach out to the victims or their lawyers when the lawyers want
Well,
and they say they want to do
We
it.
will follow up on that. Thank you very much.
The hearing opened with a direct accusation that immediately raised the temperature in the room. The senator argued that while Americans are struggling with high prices, inflation, and rising gas costs, the administration was helping create a massive financial arrangement that he described as a slush fund connected to Donald Trump and his allies. His argument was not just about the money itself. It was about control. He claimed the arrangement would allow people connected to the president to influence how billions of dollars are distributed, which he framed as a serious conflict of interest and a breakdown of public accountability. Attorney General Blanche pushed back immediately, saying the senator's description of events was inaccurate and insisting that the arrangement had been mischaracterized. But the exchange quickly revealed something deeper than a disagreement over legal procedure. This hearing became a debate over whether government power is being used fairly, or whether powerful political figures are operating under a different set of rules. The senator repeatedly returned to the idea that ordinary Americans are expected to follow strict rules, while wealthy or politically connected people appear to benefit from special treatment. That theme carried directly into the next part of the hearing, the Epstein files. And this is where the exchange became much more emotional and human. The senator accused the Department of Justice of exposing sensitive information belonging to Epstein survivors, including names and even nude photographs, while at the same time protecting the identities of alleged perpetrators through redactions. That accusation hit hard because it shifted the conversation away from politics and toward victims. The argument being made was that survivors who had already experienced abuse were being re-traumatized by mistakes made during the release of sensitive documents. Blanche defended the department by explaining that the Epstein Transparency Act required the DOJ to review millions of pages of material in a very short amount of time. He admitted mistakes were made, but said the department moved quickly to correct them once victims or lawyers raised concerns. But the senator kept pushing for something much simpler, a direct apology. And that moment mattered because it showed the difference between explaining a mistake and emotionally acknowledging harm. Blanche repeatedly tried to explain the process and emphasized that the DOJ never intended to release sensitive material. But the senator kept narrowing the focus back to the victims themselves. He wanted the Attorney General to say clearly, "I apologize." That exchange may seem small, but politically and emotionally it was very significant. For many survivors of abuse, acknowledgement matters just as much as procedure. A technical explanation about document review processes does not necessarily address the emotional damage caused when private information becomes public. The hearing then shifted into another important discussion about how institutions respond to survivors after mistakes happen. The senator said many of the women affected felt abused all over again, not only by the original crimes committed against them, but by the systems that were supposed to protect them afterward. And that point connects to a much broader issue inside the justice system. Victims often feel that once public attention fades, they are left to navigate confusing legal systems on their own. They may have lawyers, but many still feel ignored, overwhelmed, or powerless when dealing with large institutions. That is why the senator pushed the DOJ to actively reach out to survivors instead of waiting for survivors to come forward again themselves. Blanche responded by saying DOJ officials and the FBI have met with victims and lawyers and would continue doing so. But the senator argued that survivors should not have to fight for attention from the very institutions that failed them in the first place. And honestly, that was probably the most powerful part of the entire exchange. Because the hearing stopped being about legal strategy or partisan politics and became about basic human trust. Can victims trust the justice system to protect them? Can Americans trust powerful institutions to admit mistakes clearly and directly? And can the public trust that accountability applies equally to everyone, including wealthy and politically connected people? Those were the real questions underneath this hearing. The senator clearly wanted viewers to see a Justice Department that is defensive, slow to admit wrongdoing, and too willing to protect powerful interests. Blanche tried to present the DOJ as an institution dealing with a massive volume of sensitive material while working under legal constraints and trying to fix mistakes as quickly as possible. But the tension between those two perspectives is exactly why this hearing stood out. Because Americans do not just judge institutions based on whether they follow procedures. They also judge them based on empathy, transparency, accountability, and whether leaders appear willing to take responsibility when people are harmed. And in this hearing, that became the central issue. Subscribe to Capitol Breakdown HQ for more Senate and House hearing breakdowns, political analysis, and accountability-focused coverage from Washington.